delighted to welcome you to this Hudson Institute virtual event on religious freedom and the free and open Indo-Pacific. I'm Ken Weinstein, Walter P. Stern Distinguished Fellow here at Hudson Institute, and it's my distinct honor to welcome two extraordinary individuals who are uniquely insightful on the issues that we will be discussing. What's additionally remarkable about these two men is that their respective visions for religious freedom and a free and open Indo-Pacific and their robust initiatives on these issues have converged in truly remarkable ways in the last 12 months or so, as we will be discussing. Let me first introduce our distinguished guests, after which each will offer brief opening remarks, and after which I will lead us in a conversation. Yahya Cholil Staquf is General Secretary of the Nahdlatul Ulama, an independent, mass-based Islamic organization in Indonesia. With some 90 million members, the Nahdlatul Ulama, or NU for short, is the largest Muslim organization in the world. Founded nearly a century ago, it has played a pivotal role throughout the entire history of modern Indonesia. It was a decisive force in that country's struggle for independence from Dutch rule in the 1940s, in its defeat of the communist uprising in the 1960s, and in its transition to democracy in the late 1990s. Furthermore, the NU is today a decisive bulwark against radical Islam in Indonesia, as well as a force for religious tolerance and religious freedom. Mr. Staquf combines significant political and geopolitical experience with his spiritual leadership. He served as spokesman for the late Indonesian President Abdurrahman Wahid and recently served on the advisory council of the current President Joko Widodo. Last year, he was the only religious leader to serve on an Indo-Pacific commission chaired by our good friend, former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and organized by the British think tank Policy Exchange. Secretary Mike Pompeo needs absolutely no introduction. He is simply one of the most influential secretaries of state in recent history. The secretary, who I'm proud to call a friend, left a broad legacy, including one as one of the prime architects of the U.S.'s free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, and a man who placed international religious liberty at the center of U.S. foreign policy and human rights strategy. This is, for these two men, a reunion of sorts, since I understand this is the first time that you have been together since you, Mr. Staquf, welcomed Secretary Pompeo to Jakarta last October. We will get to that visit in a moment. I'd like you, Mr. Staquf, to begin our conversation with your thoughts and your vision concerning our theme, namely religious freedom and a free and open Indo-Pacific. Thank you very much.
Secretary Pompeo and Mr. Weinstein, thank you for having me here. It's a great honor to have this opportunity. About the topic that we are about to discuss here, my view is that fundamentally religious freedom and openness, everywhere, including in the Indo-Pacific region, is essential for the survival of the whole society itself. Because without freedom, you will have a continuous conflict and animosities between one group and another, all the time. So the only, and this is, the conflict and animosity is the problematic history that we inherit, from a very long time, centuries of human history. And if we allow this problematic pattern of behavior between different groups, then there will be no future for us but destruction of the whole human civilization. So first, fundamentally, it is what we need, this freedom of religion and openness, so that everybody can engage in each other and coexist each other peacefully. And in our situation, our current situation now, especially in the region, of course, we have various concerns there, and we need to find the solution. Because, for example, we have there an unequal relationship between one actor and another, and also unbalanced exercise of power. And that will endanger first the sovereignty of various nation states in the region, and that will potentially lead to unpredictable chaos in the future if we do not deal with these problems. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Staquf. Mr. Secretary, I understand that, inspired by many of the ideas that Mr. Staquf just shared, that he and the young adult movement of the Nahdlatul Ulama invited you to Indonesia last fall to share a common platform and to stand together for shared principles, including the fundamental right of religious freedom. You accepted that invitation. You gave a very news-waking speech in Indonesia, in Jakarta, in which you stated, quote, that Indonesia shows us the way forward, unquote, because it shows us that, quote, peaceful coexistence and mutual respect between religious communities is possible. Would you care to share some reflections on your trip to Indonesia and our theme today, and describe how your vision of the importance of religious freedom and a free and open Indo-Pacific brought you to Jakarta?
First of all, Ken, thanks for bringing Yahya and I back together. I remember vividly, we'd been working in the State Department on a concept of unalienable rights to sort of take the American tradition back to its founding, these ideas of religious liberty and freedom as being central to our republic, our American republic, and our very unique founding. I got this invitation to come speak not long after we'd began to work on that process, and I think they were shocked that I said yes. I think they were very surprised.
Yeah.
But it was perfect. It was perfect, and the visit to Jakarta was perfect, and that opportunity to speak to the Indonesian people and people throughout the Indo-Pacific was perfect to talk about this idea of humans being created and having rights as a result of that, and the fact that if we didn't have religious tolerance, and if there weren't amazing organizations like NU that work against extremists who try to co-opt religion in a way that's inconsistent with the value sets that we had just been working on here in the State Department, working to talk about human rights around the world and America's place in that. And we came to see so much in common. I talked about this as Indonesia leading this path forward. We know that there are nations in the region, the Chinese Communist Party in particular, who don't share that understanding. And we found that while our histories were very different, the Indonesian history and the American history are very different, our founding had lots in common. The ideas, the central tenets about how we treat our fellow citizens and the way institutions can mediate against the worst conflict and reduce risk were really at the center of both of our nation's beginnings. And so it was a really special time. It was an incredible opportunity for me to learn an awful lot, and a chance for me to talk about how America can be a good friend and ally in helping the Indo-Pacific region build out constructs that accept religious freedom as a center point of their national understandings.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Well, let me, what clear to the vision I think that both you share is that a free and open Indo-Pacific requires much more than government-to-government cooperation around security and economic interests, as crucial as that may be. That being said, though, the notion of a free and open Indo-Pacific has been accepted by many of the countries of the region. They nonetheless have, even with our closest American allies, they have very fundamentally different conceptions of what this free and open Indo-Pacific means. We have a free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. Japan calls it a free and open Indo-Pacific vision. Our fellow Quad member, India, has a very inclusive notion of what the free and open Indo-Pacific is, and trying to engage Russia, as Foreign Minister Jaishankar just mentioned, made some news headlines recently in the free and open Indo-Pacific Could you each say a bit more about why an approach that seeks cooperation around shared values is so necessary, and to give some concrete examples about where you're seeing such a cooperation? Why don't I turn to Yahya first?
Okay, allow me to begin with an assessment of the current situation in the region. I would say that the situation there is not very good, where very problematic dynamics are happening in the region, so that actually we need a short-term response to the situation. In my opinion, what we need in the short term is to seek a balance of power that to present in the region, so that there'll be no single domination over the whole region by a single power. That it's not that this kind of thing is inherently negative, but that kind of imbalance will potentially threatening the sovereignty and integrity of the surrounding countries in the region. Now, but in the long term, we need a stronger framework, to guarantee the peace and freedom and openness of the region, including with religion. So what we need then is to nurture, to foster the emergence of a rules-based order. And the way I see it, the emergence of this rules-based order is needed not just in the region, and it is impossible to have that only in the region, but we need to work it throughout the global community. And this is, to my opinion, actually is the necessary endeavor that we should take to improve, to finish what the international community had begun after the World War II, namely fostering the emergence of new order that is more just, and more peaceful for the whole global community. But we're still facing various challenges in strengthening this new order, and what we need. Part of the problem is that now various actors in the world, whether it is from various different religions or secular ideologies or identities, are competing to dominate, to make the values that they have, to dominate the whole global community. So we are facing a potentially very harsh competition among various actors over values. So that's why we, I and our colleague and networks of Nahdlatul Ulama are now working on the idea of nurturing a shared civilizational values. We need to identify what is the actual existing values that we can share together now. That's one thing. And then we need to develop consensus about what what values that we have to share to enable us coexist peacefully. And one of the pillar of the shared civilizational values that we need, we believe, I believe, is the values about human rights. But yet, people are having debates also over what is human rights. So that's why I see that Secretary Pompeo's idea about unalienable human rights is very, very important, and it has to be the primary pillar of the shared civilizational values that we need to foster for the future of the whole global civilization.
Let me just begin where Yahya finished. The places that we can build out peace, the places we can identify overlapping interests will always surround shared values. We're going to have Indonesia and the United States are going to have different commercial interests. There's going to be lots of places where we'll debate the right military policies. Well, those are all fair for diplomatic engagement and trying to find common paths forward. But what I found, whether it was in ASEAN or even when I was with the C5 in Central Asia or in Southeast Asia with subsets of those groups, we could find these ideas about the things that our people all valued, use the term shared civilizational values, the core rights that every human being has. And when we began to focus on those and build outward from that, we could form coalitions that we couldn't if we started around something else. And so we could begin to say, well, we're going to, ASEAN and its centrality to the region are going to build out a capability and a set of powers that can ensure that there is a balance, that there is not a dominant force, that these countries in Southeast Asia don't become vassal states in the way that Xi Jinping would like them to be. And it was very important work that we were doing. We were making really good progress along the way because we went back to the grounding, right? We took all the barnacles off over decades of the post-World War II order and said, what are the fundamental things upon which one can build? And when we did that, we could watch big groups come together, right? You mentioned 90 million people in the NU. 90 million people, there's 300 million Americans. Right? This is a staggeringly important part of the world, and the capacity to build out structures, peaceful structures where these nations can not only coexist but thrive alongside of each other. Can be built on a firm basis where there'll be Muslims, there'll be Christians, there'll be Jews, there'll be Baha'i, there'll be people from every different faith and people with no faith. But we'll still share a set of common understandings around things that matter to human dignity, the individual set of rights that accrue to each of us. And when we do that, we can deliver really good outcomes and ensure that there is increased stability and less risk that the Indo-Pacific region, where you began your question, that the Indo-Pacific region will look fundamentally different 5 or 10 or 25 years from now.
Yeah. Thank you. Let me ask you, Pak Yahya, there's been significant political and cultural developments in the United States now around identity politics, all sorts of questionings of our political tradition, of our founding, and was wondering if you'd care to comment on how that sort of debate in the United States, what the implications might be for the security of your region. Is that something that you in Southeast Asia worry about?
Well, first, if we agree that we are looking for a rules-based international order, a strong order. This is going to be a very long-term endeavor. We don't know how many decades we need, to go through until we find an ultimate achievement for this. So we need a consistent and coherent policies of various, significant players, of countries. And realistically, United States is if not the only most important player in this arena, it's one of the important players. I cannot imagine, what's the situation with the world stability and security with the presence of the United States of America. So America is very, very important. So whatever happens with America will affect the whole global situation. And so, well, let me just directly, straightforwardly say that we need a strong America. The whole world needs a strong and coherent America. So we cannot afford America to be divided. We cannot afford, the whole world cannot afford America to be broken because of all this identity conflict. So we have great concern, and Indonesia is a very, very heterogeneous society. We have thousands of ethnicities, hundreds of different languages, So, difference of identity is also very fundamental, potential threat to the integrity of our society. But we come to, and we have also, a history of conflict. Whether we say that the historic conflict in Indonesian society is more or less severe than the American society, that's a matter of relativity, right? But we have also that. We have to come to, a thought that we cannot continue, demanding, vengeance, for whatever happened in the past, along this history of conflict. We have to choose for our future. If you seek a reason, for one identity to hate other, there's going to be all kind of reason you can find. But in the end of the day, it's about our future together. So if we can just put all animosity, aside and think about our future together and make choice for our future together, because we did to find a solution together. You cannot possibly find a better future by destroying others. It's just unaffordable anymore in the current reality.
Again, I'll come at this from a different direction. So I made the declaration that what was taking place in Western China was genocide. What they were doing to the Uyghur people was genocide. A decision secretaries of state haven't made very often, and it is more than just symbolic. It is important because it is a request. It's a call for action. When that happens, it says the world must unite against this. We talk about not permitting genocide to happen. Everybody can agree that genocide is a horrific thing. And when I talked about that, I began the conversation around just asking the simple question about human values. It comes back to this basic idea of, would anybody think this was an acceptable way for any government to treat any human being, whether this is a government that is in the Middle East or a government that's in Southeast Asia or a government in Africa? Would anybody accept the treatment of another class of human beings in this way? And it was the important question in many respects, and I've not heard anybody respond, no, we think this is okay. Different nations have responded differently and have been willing to take different political risks connected to that because of other impacts with China, but no one has defended it. And these are the kind of things around which a set of shared understandings can be built. If everybody acknowledges that treating a human being by enslaving them or by denying them the ability to build their family and having children, or surveilling them in a way that doesn't permit them to live their life or to practice their own faith. If we can all agree about these basic things, these are what's happening to the Uyghurs in Western China, then the world should unite around saying, no, we need to find a mechanism, a set of tools to go rectify that, to protect those people and convince that government not to do that. And it's very much at the center of what we worked on when I went to Jakarta in terms of a set of understandings about the way human beings have the right to be treated by others and by their governments. And when we work in that way, I'm confident we can build out a free and open Indo-Pacific around this set of shared values, these shared understandings, and then we can push through the things where we'll have different interests, different ways we want to think about things. I saw it very clearly when we strip away all the things that small p politics of these issues and get back down to the things that really matter. You can see these coalitions begin to be built in ways that will definitely bring increased stability, increased prosperity, and I am confident more peace to the region as well.
Well stated. Let me ask you, Pakya, drawing on this very moving statement by the secretary and the designation, the brave decision to brave, but in some sense, kind of obvious in some ways, call it genocide.
Yes,
but it's incredibly brave. And I think back to my grandparents, and I wish somebody had, and those in my family who didn't make it out of Nazi Germany. I wish the Secretary of State at the time and the President had taken similar action and done so earlier, and the world would have been a much better place. You've talked about you've talked in similar ways about the question of civilizational values, as you mentioned, and you've also talked about the need to create strong societies to engage people across nations, and really with a focus on, rather than sort of on establishing kind of the floor of how human beings ought to be treated, but sort of pushing towards a kind of higher common denominator. I was wondering if you could talk about how you see that vision playing out.
Yeah, so this is a matter of developing consensus, and we need a global consensus. So provided the reality of international political structure now, we need also to identify the structure, the hierarchical structure of consensus that we need to go through to find ultimate agreement, among everybody. So, and there is an international politics, having to do with all this. So the way I see it, first, we need to strengthen the existence of nation state as one basic structure to consolidate consensus globally. So, and that means we need governments to get involved in this endeavor. But involving governments mean fostering policies. And what we need is a consistent and coherent policies for a long term. While in any democracy, and we have actually most countries, have democracies, government change, every term. And maybe, the policy that we need to be employed need more than just one period of government. So that's why actually we need a more fundamental consensus in the society. We need the consensus in the level of the society, so that then the society would continue demanding the policy to the government. So in the Commission of Indo-Pacific that I was a member, I came with a suggestion to have a international congress of strong societies involving various civil society actors in the region, mass-based organization like what we have, to foster a consensus about fundamental values that the whole society need to share. And then, based on that values, we develop political aspiration to demand the government to put consistent and coherent policy, so that the policy that is necessary to foster the emergence of this rules-based international order will be perennial to the government. Whoever is elected to be in charge for the government, should follow this settled, established consensus of values that are shared by the society.
Yes, you, Secretary Pompeo, drawing on what Pak Yahya said, there is, I think, as conservatives, we're quite concerned about the state of the culture in the United States, the corruption of the culture, and the corruption that in turn has upon society. And when you hear, here you are an evangelical, me obviously a Jew, and Pak Yahya, noted Muslim leader.
Gang's all here.
Exactly, all three of us. There's some others in the Indo-Pacific who aren't, but it's quite. You hear this talk about. I mean, as an American, I think we're all deeply concerned about the direction of our civil society, where it's going, how uncivil it's become, and also just the attack upon our founding, upon our political culture. I was wondering what your reflections are on that and how that affects foreign policy.
So they're deeply intertwined. So I spent the last 4 years working on mostly things external, first as CIA director, and then the last 2.5 years serving as President Trump's Secretary of State. And I could see how closely they were tied to the work I'd done when I was a member of Congress representing the 4th Congressional District. It is deeply disturbing to not only you and I, Ken, as Americans, when we watch not critiques of our founding, not saying, this wasn't quite right. We all know the American history so deeply, and the fact that we were striving and are striving for a more perfect union. But to suggest somehow that the nation was ill-founded or wrongly founded, or there was something so essential in the founding that causes us to have to just deviate from all the institutions and structures that have put 245 years of success on the line is really dangerous. And I say that for us as Americans. As Pak Yahya said, the world's watching this too. And there are bad actors around the world that are trying to exploit this, right? You heard the Chinese in Anchorage talk about BLM. When Vladimir Putin got up at his press conference, when President Biden and he had concluded their summit, he talked about the violence in Minnesota, and he talked about these radical groups inside the United States are fueling this. And I think that's just very telling. You, Pak Yahya, said you need a strong America. I saw this during my time in service in the administration. The world needs a strong America. We get it wrong sometimes, but we are a force for good places that we go. We show up with noble intentions every place that we go. And we have this deep history where we understand these value sets that are so central to humanity in a way that some nations just haven't. They haven't gotten to the point in their maturity yet where they will be rights-respecting countries. We have to get this at home, and it is really important. We can have this debate, but in the end, we have to respect that this nation had its central understandings founded in a Judeo-Christian history, that it has served America well, that our founders had it largely right about these institutions that, to your point, they persevere. You have elections, one administration comes, another one goes, members of Congress come, they go, but these institutions continue to flourish. We have to be able to protect those central institutions, and if we don't, it will certainly damage us internationally, our standing, but more importantly, it'll damage the capacity for the United States to be what it has been for an awfully long time, the true vanguard in helping build out human rights institutions across the world and structural solutions to creating peace in the world as well. It's not just those of us in America and in Indonesia who need this. The world does.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. Let me change gears slightly here and ask you to, Pak Yahya, to go into a little bit more detail on the threats, the security threats you see in Indonesia and in the Indo-Pacific more broadly, and how you think they can be addressed.
Yeah, you know, we have a reality there in the region where many countries there, like Indonesia and Malaysia, and also countries like Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia and others, you know, they're realistically are weak, you know, relatively weak, you know, economically and militarily. While in the other hand, we have a China that is growing so fast into a huge power in the region. Not, you know, I don't want to be prejudiced, you know, to say that China is an evil power, for example. It's not like that. But the imbalance, you know, that then is emerging because of this situation is potentially threatening the stability in the region, strengthening the the peace of minds of the surrounding countries like Indonesia, especially when then China announced its agenda of one belt, one road, that then practically crossing the territory of Indonesia, and that means that Indonesia need a substantial power to negotiate with China to allow them to go through Indonesia's territory, and if the bargaining power is in balance, then potentially Indonesia's sovereignty is under threat, So, and since it's not just happened with Indonesia, it happens with many other countries too in the region, almost all of the countries in the region. So that means, potentially we have a very serious problem in the future if we cannot soon enough have a balanced presence of power in the region. So that's why we need, like I said, we need United States to be strong, to keep strong.
Yeah,
the others.
And I think that's a perfect analysis. Not only strong, but work alongside you, right? Mm-hmm. Build up partnerships and sets of relationships that matter, that can deliver. I'm confident that we can do that. You talked about the sovereignty of those nations. I think that's what it is. People ask questions like, do you think the Chinese will invade X or Y, or will they do? Well, that's not the model. Xi Jinping's model is very different than that. The model is to use coercive influence tools. So whether that's information, media in these countries, or whether it's using their capacity to say, no, you can't develop the resources in your own estuaries, in your own waterways that are clearly inside your lawful international EEZ, your own economic zone. These are the kinds of things I remember, Ken. So I always go back to my days as a young cadet. There are two things you knew, right? Evaluate capability and intent. Yeah. You talked about the Chinese capability growing. It's a big country. They are determined to be the leaders in AI, the leaders in blockchain, the leaders in fastest, best missile systems. They put they're putting nuclear silos in at a rate of one a week. Right? This is a country with true capacity built up. Then you look at intention. You can just see what they're doing with One Belt, One Road, the work they're doing to exercise economic, coercive capability in these places. And so we know we have a threat. And this is going to require collective action from what I think of as the West. It's not a location. It's not even a direction. It is an idea. It is an idea about sovereignty and the rule of law and the capacity for those like-minded nations who share those civilizational values to work together to push back against the threats to those very value sets. If we don't, if we all decide, nope, you know what, this is, we'll let them do Southeast Asia first. It won't hit Hawaii for a little while, right? Or this is bad for America, and it's certainly bad for the region and the world.
Yeah, I could not agree more with what Secretary Pompeo just said. And it is just the time for us to to have a substantial conversation about this issue, because what's happening now is I'm seeing that various significant actors, necessary actors, tend to be to hold themselves back, from the issue, and try to avoid it,
Sure.
I think this is not the right attitude that we need now. We need to have a serious, open discussion about this, and try to find a path, towards solution.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I
you,
want
Ken.
to thank these extraordinary men. This was an absolutely fascinating conversation.
Thank
The second that you guys have had. We look forward to hosting
We'll do
more
it.
of these. Maybe we'll do it in Jakarta next time.
I would love that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'd love to. We'd love to. We miss you already.
I
Mr.
miss being there.
Secretary.
I'll be back. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Pak Yahya.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Pak Yahya.